Hello and welcome to Clamp, the Creating, Living, and Making podcast. I'm your host, Morley Kurt, and joining me as always is Grant Alexander.
Hello.
And Adam Mackey.
Hi.
What's up this week, guys? What is in your clamps, Adam?
Sounds so weird every time I say it. I haven't really done anything. I've been working every day, but I got a new tool, which is pretty cool. It's so I got a new sander. Yes, I didn't mean to rhyme that. I got a new sander, and it has like replaceable bases. So you know how you have like a sheet sander. It's got a base that you can put that base on, and it has these like prongs that stick up in the bottom of the actual sander like motor part, and that like locks it in place so it can't spin. And then there's like the mouse attachment, like the triangle thing, and then you've got like the round orbital, which you put that on, which doesn't have the prongs, and it spins.
And I wondered about
it's
that.
Really, it's really cool. It's and it was only $50 from Audi. I mean, it's probably not the best quality, but like I literally used it for 5 seconds with 180 grit sandpaper, and it was better than using my Ryobi for like a couple of minutes with 120 grit. Easy.
My sander is from Aldi. It was a gift from my sister, and I didn't know where it was from forever, and I finally found out it's like an in-store brand.
Is it Ferrex?
I think it's Parkside. I'm happy with it. It seems to be pretty bulletproof.
Yeah, well, because like this one, it looks more like what you would expect a Fez tool or something like that to look in person. Not like not just like a big sort of cylinder thing. It's like a full on. I don't know. I put pictures on Instagram. People saw it.
It's a little more swoopy.
Yeah. So pretty stoked about that.
Nice.
And then I guess the only other thing I've been working on is I've been trying to decide whether I'm going to paint my workbench or not. I'm now thinking of going the other way and doing like inverted colors to what my current like benches are. So like have pine as like the main color of the drawers and everything, and then where I was going to have white like borders and stuff, have like a dark green, like dark stain on pine.
Have you tried mocking it up? Like have you put those colors in Fusion to see what it might look like?
I could do it in Fusion.
That might be.
I might do that
way
tomorrow.
To figure it out.
I've got some time at work tomorrow. I might do that.
Nice.
See how it looks.
Well, Grant, what have you been up to this week?
Well, not very much. Still not back to 100% on my back. We did finally publish the Clamp website, which is the exciting thing, which has been a little while in the working, but, when you can't sit down, it makes it really hard to do any kind of computer work. And the other thing I did is I disassembled the first sit-down stand-up desk I had and assembled a new sit-down stand-up desk that is slightly more rigid. I'm still not 100% happy with how rigid stuff is, but I think part of that's because my monitor is just a very susceptible to being moved. So if it wasn't for my monitor moving, my laptop doesn't move now. I can make it move, but the monitor just shakes like crazy. So it makes it really hard to type because as you're trying to look at it, it just keeps moving, and it's just very frustrating. So
I think you need to get a monitor stand that clamps to the desk.
Well, that's it's like you guys can't just let me finish sentences sometimes. So what I want to do is clamping to the desk sounds good, but then it still, has the potential for it being moving with the desk. So what I was thinking is I should just get one that clamps to the wall and then slides up and down. So it's kind of like on a ball bearing system on the wall, and then you can lock it so that it's not attached to the desk.
Surely you could just get a TV mount that does that.
The problem is the up and down, right? So you need something that can easily go up and down with the desk.
So if you wanted to go up and down with the desk, but you don't want it rigidly linked, you could use a pulley and have it on the wall with the ball bearing.
Yeah. There you go.
That could work.
I like it. Except for
also,
pulley.
if you want to, What was that?
Go ahead.
If you want it, if the problem is that it's just shaking, I mean, a more just rigid mount would probably do it as well. Like if you had some sort of like triangle rather than an arm.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you looked into if you can like retrofit the sit stand desk to make it more rigid, like add a crossbeam or something?
So the way that, like, basically because of the way it works, I don't think you can, because anywhere you would attach would move. So any kind of bracing that you would put in there would have to move up and down, and that just doesn't sound like it's going to work because the legs like telescope out, and the rigid part of the leg is at the bottom, and the telescope comes out from there.
Right. I mean, you could. I'm pretty sure I know what the frame looks like. Couldn't you add something between the 2 feet, like on the ground? Or
That's not where it's shaky.
okay,
I definitely could. I just don't like. That's not the shaky part.
gotcha.
It's more like front to back, and it just any kind of like extra bracing just seems like it wouldn't assist. I could make the desk smaller, and then it wouldn't be as much of a problem. But then I kind of lose what I'm going for. It just, yeah. Basically, I need to.
Once like 3 laptops and 20 monitors.
I want a deeper desk so that I can easily, like when I make a phone call and I'm writing on like a pad of paper, I just want to push my keyboard out of the way, and easily be able to do it. So that's why I wanted to go with like a 30-inch deep desk. And it also just fits perfectly in the spot that I want to put it in. I just have a thing. I just have a vision in my mind, and I will make it work. It just might take time.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it might be a cool optimization project.
Totally. Yeah, I have another idea, which basically would be that you run rails on the wall, and you have some sort of like way of connecting the desk to these rails on the wall. So then it's rigidly attached to the rails, but can roll up and down.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how, but something with springs or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure we could spend a whole episode kind of like talking this through.
I see what you're going on now. You're saying let's move on.
Well, this week, it's definitely been a process getting used to my new schedule, not in a bad way, but just, when you start a new thing and you're getting used to like the extra time that you have to take. I haven't had a ton of time for working on my own projects, but I did finish up this guy. So for the video watchers or the audio listeners, this is a Morakniv, which is I think it's a Swedish knife company. They make this really great camping knives and carving knives and other things. And I wasn't a fan of the handle that this came with. It's a rubberized plastic handle that doesn't feel like it reflects the quality of the knife. So I made a Baltic birch handle for it, which I power carved with a rotary tool. And I'm like super happy with how it came out. It kind of reminds me of a bowling alley because I put like 6 coats of finish on it. So it's like super smooth and shiny. And, like the Baltic birch plies kind of have that sort of effect. So the knife itself is done. I'm now working on the sheath for it. It's this like kind of random project that I've had in my head for a while that feels nice to kind of finally be working on a little bit. It's just one of those things that I just needed to get down to see what it would look like. And I made pins for the first time through the handle, which I've actually that saw blade knife handle that I made for a while back for Eden, that actually never made it back to North America because she brought it with her to Singapore. And while it was there, actually one of the scales fell off. And I think the reason for that was I didn't use pins, but she never brought it back because she didn't want to be like hassled by Singaporean customs. She's a little worried about that. So it now lives in Singapore. But hopefully the pins will add some longevity to this one.
When we went to Fiji the beginning of last year, I had my pocket knife in my pocket and didn't realize until I got to the airport. But luckily, I work for the train, so I just went up to one of the people there and said, "Hey, can you mail this back to my home depot?" and then they held on to it for me.
Nice.
Because I probably wouldn't have got that through customs. I think I could have put it in my like check-in luggage or something, but I didn't really want to do the hassle. It was too sentimental.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, for in Canada flights, you can bring a knife on board of the plane, up to
What?
I think it's 3 inches of blade.
Yeah, I remember that was a new rule a
3
few years
inches?
ago.
Yeah, I think
And
it's 3 inches.
Yeah, I think it has to be under 3. Like I think a Swiss Army
Yeah.
knife would be okay.
Yeah, well, it definitely is, because I've took my Swiss Army knife on the plane.
Yeah.
That's a pretty long blade.
Yeah.
He looks down at him, at his 3-inch comparison.
So, Morley, I'm curious that you said that was a like something you've wanted to do for a while, but were you expecting the handle to be replaced? Like, was that planned or?
It was kind of it was I knew I wanted to do a Baltic birch handle for a while. But I kind of had like no idea how I was going to go about doing it. So I kind of had to just like dive in and start. So it sort of became this kind of like, it turned into this project, which is like, I am figuring out the current scale of my free time right now. So like, this is something I don't have to put a ton of planning time into, and I can just kind of like do discrete steps before and after work. So it fit in very well for that. And I think having those sort of like more spontaneous projects in some ways are really nice for that. When you really just like want to make something, but you don't necessarily have the time to do all of like the other steps or things that might take like an hour or 2 hours. I mean, that's another thing about doing small projects, but not having to put in all the planning time and the sunk costs of like, oh, well, this went wrong and now I lost an entire day, can be like a nice gumption builder, as Robert Persig would say. One of my favorite expressions.
I don't know who that is.
He's wrote Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which me and Grant have talked about before.
The name sounded really familiar, but I couldn't recall where it came from, and it just didn't seem to pop. Because when I think of gumption, I think of Nick Offerman and his book called Gumption.
Same idea with Nick Offerman.
Yeah.
When you say gumption, I think of a cleaning product that we have here.
That's a good name for a cleaning product.
It's sort of like sugar soap, but more of a powder, more of a, I don't know, paste.
Well,
Anyway.
I always think I'm always more excited to do a spontaneous project. Like when something pops into my head and I can get it done, like I'm like really super excited for it. When I spend time planning something out, I end up using all of my like exciting powers in the plan, and then things kind of fizzle out.
Yeah. I can't remember who said this, and maybe you guys can help me remember, because I'm sure it was someone we all follow on social media, but they posted something about how like when you get an idea that you're excited about, this person is very mindful about recording it immediately. And I don't know if it was in the context of sketching or if it was actually in making, but they're like, you gotta get it down when you're still excited about it, because that excitement fades really quickly.
I do remember someone saying that.
Yeah, I wish we could give them credit. But it's a great idea, right? Because like sometimes ideas can start to feel stupid so quickly. And the idea might not be stupid. It might be a great idea, but you don't really know until you start prototyping and sketching and maybe even just like making it. Like that was the thing with this knife. Like I thought it would be a cool effect, the Baltic birch, but I had no idea like what it would actually look like. I was just like, ooh, stripes carved. It's going to make some nice swoopiness. Let's, you kind of have, you develop those instincts to sort of trust yourself that like an idea that you're excited about could be cool.
You know what would be a good idea is if you had something that you could write on, like when you're falling asleep and you come up with an idea.
Wow, that's a great idea. I might have to make something about that.
That's funny. I'm actually like the opposite. When I think up of a project that I want to do, like when it pops into my head, the first thing I want to do is get into like Fusion and design it. but I think that's just because like Fusion is like my getaway that I can do when I'm not in the shop. So it's like my way of building straight away, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And I think if I had more time where I wasn't able to go in the shop, but I had access to a computer, that would totally make sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And same the opposite. If I could go in the shop every day and wasn't on my computer as much, then I probably would not plan as much.
I think ideally, like my favorite way of working is to do those spontaneous, like let's do the project right when I get the idea. But there haven't been many times in my life that I've had the setup to actually do that. That's been the really nice thing about 3D printing is I can execute on something right when I get the idea. Like, yes, I have to do some of the modeling, but I'm quick enough in modeling that like I can keep the excitement in the like 30 minutes to an hour it takes to sort of like design it or at least like get it started. But one of the really cool things about working in the makerspace now is that I have access to all these tools that if I get an idea for something for the makerspace, I can kind of start acting on it right then. But now it's funny, like yesterday I got an idea for like a larger scale project to improve the space, which is like something they want me to work on. But I kind of recognized that the idea wasn't fleshed out enough, that I still needed to think about it a little more before I kind of like shared it with my boss. And that's something in terms of like working for other people and making projects, like that's a lesson I've learned in those things is like sometimes you don't want to share it right away because you might not have the answers to the questions that they're bound to ask about it. You got to let it marinate a little more internally.
Right. And especially if it's not well thought out, you might share something that ends up not being the best idea. You think about it a little more, you plan it out, and you go, you know what would actually be better, and then you share that better idea. And you know, because if you share an idea with someone and then they get excited about it, you're kind of stuck on that path.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if you're working for a client or making something for someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's something I've had to get used to these last, just like going from being my own boss for this past year versus working for someone else is like, I can marinate on an idea for as long as I want. But if I'm working with someone else, then things just feel like they move a lot faster because if everyone's excited about it, then you're all kind of like going off of each other's energy. And then you're right. If you say an idea that isn't fully fleshed out, maybe the wrong thing gets made.
That's why I definitely prefer to make things for myself rather than commissions. I decided commissions are just not for me.
Mm-hmm.
The stress of it all, if something's not perfect, and like even making stuff for my wife stresses me out because if something's not completely perfect, she'll pick me up on it.
My wife is much nicer. She just likes it if I finish a project. She's happy no matter how it looks or how it functions as long as it's done.
Well, I've told my wife that many times that she wants it done within an hour or something. It's not going to be perfect.
I mean, this is a good comparison with planned projects because I think a lot of commissions do tend to have like a longer planning stage. And it's similar even to like projects that take longer to plan for yourself. And those I find do sometimes have like a more satisfying payoff because you've put so much into them that, there's more of like, you're taking more of a risk. Like you've put all this time and effort into it. Then if it turns out great, it sometimes feels nicer than if a spontaneous project does. It's a different feeling, but that is like with commissions and longer term projects, when you can kind of like make that vision come true, it's very like, it's more satisfying in a grand scale sometimes. But I agree, Adam, like I've made a conscious effort to step away from commissions this year. There's like a larger one that I am working on, but even that one is like, there is a certain amount of stress that comes with it. And I have to be constantly like talking myself down from the ledge, being like, it's okay. It's not a rush. It will be good. You just have to kind of like trust the process. And it's just a very different pace of work from making something spontaneously for yourself or for a video.
Yeah, for sure. So like I did the draws last year for that Land Cruiser, and beat myself up about it the whole time because I just wasn't happy with how they were turning out. I said to the guy when he came, like, there's a few things I'm not happy with, and then I just deleted all the footage. I refused to make a video and put it out because I'm just not happy with it.
Oh, that's
But
too bad because I thought it was really cool. Should have done it.
Yeah, and I bet on camera people would think it was perfect and fine. But to me, I just wasn't happy with it.
You could have easily just explained what you weren't happy with and how you would have done it better next time.
Yeah, but then, like, by the end of it, I wasn't happy, so I didn't get finishing shots and installation shots, and I just wasn't filming as much, and I didn't get the shots I need to actually make a video out of it.
So, that is more... Yeah. That is something that I definitely have battled with in the past, where I start filming because I'm excited about something, and then halfway through, I start worrying about, like, how it's going to turn out. And so I get less excited about it and like second guess myself constantly. And I stop filming the project. And then in the end, either it turns out really great and I'm like super devastated that I don't have any of the I only have half a project filmed, or it turns out crappy and I go, it's okay. I'll live with that.
Yeah.
Well, so I have a problem of not completing projects. And it's generally because they're not planned out enough. And I think I take, like, I listened to, like, obviously Jimmy DiResta. He's been on the podcast before, but one of the things he always says is, like, get working and the way to do it's going to come to you. And I think that's true, except for the fact that I don't have the experience he does, right? And I don't have the skills he does. So sometimes I'll start something and I'll not know what the next step is. Like, I tore down the wall between two of the rooms in my house in 2016. It's still not complete. Well, the rooms are now one, but I'm still working on, like, finishing that entire project of turning 2 rooms into 1 master bedroom. Most of it's done, but it's just like there's little things left over. And it's always like one more thing that I go, I was really excited when I did it. Like, super excited, go get into it. But if I'd planned it out a little better, I'd probably be done by now.
I think it's difficult when, like, a project that you don't know a lot about is also feels large scale, because it's really easy then to get, like, paralyzed by indecision. I think the Jimmy DiResta's advice of just, like, get started and one step at a time, have each thing inform the next, works really well when it is, like, a personal project that isn't for someone else and that doesn't have high stakes. I mean, I think it could work if you're doing a room renovation. It's just that I think most people don't have the confidence to just kind of, like, follow each step with the next. And I think, Grant, probably with you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but having smaller periods of time to work in also makes it difficult to finish that if it's not all planned out, because you have to spend this time kind of just, like, staring at it and figuring out the next step. And you can't sort of just, like, do a bunch of mindless work because you didn't have all the pre-planning time of knowing what that mindless work is.
And I actually think that's a big part of why I'm not as productive as I need to be, is because I spend too much time figuring out what I need to do next. And if you've planned it out, you know what the next step is, and you just go and do it, right? Or if you've done something, like, if you're building drawers and you've built 1 million drawers before, you just know, okay, the next step is I do this and then I do that, and then, or boxes or whatever, or like making a leather knife sheath or a belt. You know what the next step is. So you don't sit there and look at it and go, should I stitch first or should I glue? Like, you just know, okay, the next step is I'm going to glue it, and then I'm going to stitch it, and then I'm going to, right? Like, then I'm going to finish the edges, and then I'm going to, or whatever. Like, I find I spend a lot of time going, like, debating what's the best way forward instead of actually moving forward.
And I think that if you really look at a lot of finished products, you'll see that a lot of the time it doesn't really matter as much as you think it does. Like, people
So
do
true.
things in many different ways,
Definitely.
and they all tend to look pretty good. And some of them even don't look pretty good, but a lot of times people don't care. Like, they don't look at that level of detail. So a few weeks ago, Eden and I, we went to this beautiful park in Toronto. I think it's the biggest park in the city. It's called High Park. And the history of the park is they have all of these like old estates sort of combined their land and gave it to the city to build this park. So there's a few very old houses on the land that were built in like the early 1800s. And I'm sure many makers do this, but we were walking around one of the houses and I was just like zeroing in on all the little construction details, especially as someone who's like never built a house. I'm just like fascinated by that stuff. So I'm like, okay, how did they like frame the windows? How did they attach the columns to like the top of this porch, especially like if it being built a while ago? And a lot of times you look at that and you realize that like it's very logical. It's not really overthought. It just like sort of makes sense when you think about, you know, the flow of forces and where water is going to go. Of course, knowing all of those issues to look out for takes a lot of experience. But I guess looking at a lot of those things, it can be overwhelming, but it can also be a little heartening to see like, oh, there's lots of different ways you can build a house.
I think the more knowledge I get, and I think we've talked about this before, the more knowledge I get, the more I second guess myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I used to be happy. I think this was my exact thing, is I used to be happy to just screw some 2x4s together and call that a desk. And now if it's not perfectly jointed and planed and you know, perfectly glued together with, you know, then I'm like, well, it's not good. I need to throw this one in the trash. Right. And it's like, I wish I could go back to like ignorance is bliss. And I think what I like about when I do a project and I don't plan it out and I'm actually able to finish it is that when I'm excited about it, I just get into it and do it. And I worry less about the final like perfection of the final product. And I get more into like, I'm going to make it work. It's like the folding buck saw that you used when we went camping. I was super excited about that. I made it with the intention of it being a prototype. I've never made the non-prototype version. I have one that works, right? And I think that's the problem is, so I made the first one. It's not perfect, but it works. And so now I want the second one to be perfect. So I have to plan it out meticulously, right?
And I will say that first one, like, it works very well. Like, I know there are some improvements you want, like with ergonomics and stuff, but like we used it to chop up lots of wood.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other problem is that I think what I want to do is something, I want it to like ergonomically work a little better. And like, I want it to look nicer. And I find I'm not really great at making things look nice. I make them look okay. I'm usually okay. Like, whatever, it's okay. Like, no one ever looks at my work and says, wow, you're the best craftsman in the world. They look at my work and go, hey, yeah, you make some cool stuff, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. But I'm planning out the buck saw. I've got a plan to make a really cool, and I'm hoping to do a collab with someone on it. And we'll see. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like being able to be effective at spontaneous projects, a lot of that does come down to experience. And I really relate what you said with like, if you dive too deeply into a craft, it can be paralyzing because then you're kind of chasing this perfection. And it's one of the things that I really like about being more of a generalist is that you get to like keep up that feeling of excitement all the time because you don't spend long enough on any one craft to try to become like perfect at it. You're always like, you know, excited about these new and different things, which has its pros and its cons. But if you're not a fine furniture maker or, you know, like a professional blacksmith or a millwright, then it's mostly pros, in my opinion. It just depends what your goals are. But, you know, like, no, I think it's also possible to have a more kind of like spontaneous on the fly approach and come out with good products. It just takes a lot of time and knowing when to focus your energies and when you can kind of cut corners. And when you'd be like, oh no, this is something where I have to make like a specific choice for. It's building up your repertoire of skills and experiences. Oh, Grant is frozen.
Yeah,
This is so weird. The angles all just keep, I don't know if it's happening for you guys, but the angles keep switching for me.
Yeah. But
Grant's
muted.
Oh, we're falling apart.
Everyone froze on me. Sorry about that. Was that me or was that you guys?
That was you. You disappeared for a sec.
Yeah.
Okay. I immediately ran a speed test and everything looked fine, but I believe it was me. Okay, sorry. If it happens again, just keep talking. I'll get back into the conversation eventually.
Okay. Yeah, well, I didn't have anything else to say on that, so I was just kind of waiting for one of you to pick up.
Well,
I got distracted with Grant disappearing. I forgot what you said.
I was basically talking about how, like, number one, being a maker and a generalist, it can be kind of freeing in that you don't have to worry about getting like perfection on things, and you can maintain that level of excitement when skills are new. And also how when you're very experienced, you can be more spontaneous, like Jimmy DeResta.
Right. I think so. I was talking with Emily Joyce about like iterations and making more than one of something, because I often will only make one project, because I was mentioned on the Because We Make podcast, and they said that, you know, I often don't make something more than once, and I don't make something more than once because the first time is like doing the first sand of a project. You see it go from rough to smooth, and you're like, wow, that was amazing. And every other grit after that, the change becomes smaller and smaller, right? And that's where I feel like I have, like, the first cutting board I made, I was amazed, and I was like, wow, that was amazing. And every cutting board after that, there was less of an amazement to it. So that's why I just went, you know what? I don't want to make multiples of stuff because I feel like I don't get as much joy out of the iterations. And I think that's because, I don't know what it is, but I just remember, like, this conversation has made me think about that.
I mean, then you also have to start thinking about, like, where are you getting your fulfillment from in making things? So if you're making nicer and nicer cutting boards, then you're right. Like, it will be difficult to get just personal fulfillment from looking at it and seeing it and getting that satisfaction. However, if you're sharing them and selling them, then you get the satisfaction of someone being like, oh, like, this cutting board is beautiful. I'm going to use it for years. Yeah. And that's why I think, you know, among other reasons, that craftsmen tend to sell their work, not just outfit their homes in beautiful furniture.
Totally. And I could see, like, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's where you get your fulfillment from. And for me, it's putting the thing in my mind into reality. It's when I make ideas reality. That's the thing to me that really kind of gets me going. And I totally know other people, it's not. Like, that can be one of the things that gets them going, but I don't know. So I guess that's why I think I much prefer doing spontaneous projects, is because the time between having an idea and getting something in reality is usually quicker, because I'm not spending any time planning.
Yeah. I think it gets a little complicated when you have to think about, like, the physical thing. Like, I agree in that, like, making ideas reality is probably one of the biggest fulfillments for me. And I've thought about this in terms of, like, you know, when I love gluing wood together. It's so satisfying to, like, take two pieces and attach them together. And that feeling is, like, twice as nice as seeing the finished piece of those two things together. Like, I enjoy the experience of it a lot more. So I almost feel like I need to make more things for other people to, like, have the right type of fulfillment, because I don't really care as much about having the thing myself. I more enjoy the process of doing it. I mean, part of it too is that, like, I only have so much space, so it's like, how much do I want to fill up my apartment with material things? I was thinking about this on the way to work actually a couple of days ago, which is like, what is the, you know, like, the longer term game of making things and making videos? Like, I mean, unless I move to a larger space at some point, like, I'm not going to want to keep, like, adding things to like my space. And one of the great things about this new job is that I will be able to do that a lot, like be able to have those experience and get the fulfillment of adding it to someone else's space. But I kind of also foresee doing like other sorts of projects that might be a little less material or more just video focused. I don't know. I think it's something I'm going to have to consider going forward.
I think that you also need to consider whether it's a commission or you're building something to sell. Like, if I was to make a table and sell it, I would be a lot less stressed and happy about it than if I had a commission to build a table, because then I'm building to someone's expectation and not selling. Like, if I was building it to sell it, I'm building to my own expectations, and then I price it or whatever on what I think's fair for my quality of work. If that makes sense.
Yeah. The only way I think I would want to get into selling things is by having an inventory.
Yeah.
Like commissions to me just seem like they add a lot of stress to making that I don't need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't have issue in selling my products. I have issue in commissions, I think.
Yeah. Spec work. I think that's why a lot of people do it. It's a lot less stressful.
In saying that,
go on, Adam.
So I was going to say, in saying that, like, we do have a plan this year to get a CNC, which I guess would be all commission work if we, like, when we start up the business doing that. But, like, it's a CNC. Like, I'm not really going to have anything to do with it. It's going to cut itself out and then we ship off the product,
Well, like, what's nice about doing a CNC or something like that is that what you're actually putting out there, what you can put out there is like, I can do any name you want in any font you want, and boom, you got yourself a sign, right?
Yeah.
Or stuff like that. Like, you can be like, if you, Night Carver Designs does a lot of CNC stuff, and she does like these really cool like designs and then sells multiples of them. Right. So she makes like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is something that I've seen on her feed a lot recently. She designed it all up, made the little TMNT thing. And like, so she's not commissioning those signs. Nobody's calling up and saying, I want to do that. She's designing her own thing.
Yeah.
And then selling it.
Well, that's one of the things I want to do, and I've always wanted to do, but a CNC is going to make it a lot easier, is like when you buy a house, I don't know if it's the same there, but if you buy a house, like generally the real estate will give you like a bottle of wine to celebrate or whatever. So my plan was to go around and offer cutting boards in the shape of houses for them to give like to people. And then, especially with the CNC, I can add like names to it, which would cost more, obviously. Or if you really want to go full custom, I can take a front picture of the house and cut the cutting board to the same shape as the house that's been bought.
Well, that's custom.
Adam, do people ever name their houses in Australia?
Kind of. So the big thing here is to get like a sign made up for the front of your house, but it's always like something put into like one word. So when we had a house growing up, we had a sign that said "gonna do," and it was like GUNNADOO. So it's like, it looks like it's one word, but it means like something else. So it's like, that's a big thing here.
Was that like a family motto? Like, I'm gonna do it?
No, I think it's just like bought at a fair or something.
Oh, okay.
But so it's like a certain sort of style of sign as well. Like, it's a wooden sign cut into a certain shape with the word cut into it, and then like that's black. The word is black, and then the wood green. And like, yeah, I don't know.
So naming houses is a thing I've noticed in like beach communities around the US, and I think it's because people name ships, so it's that like nautical theme, and so people will give like their houses, like they'll call it like Shelley, or not, it doesn't have to be like a water metaphor, but like Harriet or something, and I was just asking because
actual names,
like people's names, or something a little more like less on the nose. I was just saying because like doing house signs in that way could be cool as well. I mean, when you talk about like houses with CNC, I mean, you could also do numbering. Like people get, at least around here, like super creative with the number signs on their houses.
For sure.
Lots of opportunity.
So here, there's not many people I find name their houses, but it seemed to be like an older thing that would happen because the original. So I live on what's called Ryan Farm, and it used to be a farm. If you can imagine that they named the neighborhood after the farm, but the original house has a name, and it's called Kilmorey House, and this has become a big thing in my neighborhood because it had 2 acres of land in the middle of a subdivision, which was awesome. And I wanted to live there. But the person who lived there died, and their kids wanted to sell it off to a developer. So they ended up getting heritage status for the house, but all the land is now turned into houses. So they lost the 2 acres of land and got split up into like 19 houses. It's ridiculous. But it was named that by a poet who lived there at one point, William Wilfred Campbell, and he wrote a poem about the house and about living there. So it's just one of those things that I think if you're going to name something like that, you should probably have a reason why you've chosen that name.
Yeah.
Especially if you're naming an inanimate object, it needs to have a good reason.
Yeah.
Like my station wagon's name is Katy Perry.
And why is that?
Well, my wife named it, so don't get on me. But she named it Katy Perry
Sure.
because it's a California car. It came from California. So and they have Katy Perry has that song like California Girl or whatever, I think.
So
Anyways,
like you imported it from California?
I bought it off the people who bought it at Beverly Hills BMW.
Oh, cool.
So we're the second owner, and so it's like the guy lived in California doing like IT and tech stuff, and then moved back to Ottawa because apparently Ottawa is this is North Silicon Valley. In case you didn't know.
Oh, wow. Your claim to fame.
Sure. Well, we used to have like a huge tech sector, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. BlackBerry? Was that BlackBerry?
Nortel was the big one.
Yeah. So in going back to the topic a bit, there's one thing I thought of, and that is how I think it's easy sometimes to get too caught up in planning projects, especially when it comes to like shop projects. Because I think shop projects, things of that nature, are so focused on workflow. And I don't have a ton of experience with this, so maybe your guys' input would be really interesting. But I find it can be even difficult to get started because you're like, I want this entire system in place before I even build one thing to go into it. But I think that's not a very realistic way of doing it.
I 100% agree. And the problem comes down to, I think, people getting like too much worried about how efficient something might be in the future and not realizing that you can change things if you don't like it.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, it needs to be perfect and the most efficient system ever. And it's like, but I'll never actually start it because I've never figured out the most efficient way.
Yeah.
So I think that goes down to it. You need to have the right balance between planned and spontaneous. Because if you're only ever working spontaneously, you're probably not reaching your full potential. And if you're only ever working planned, you might spend a little too much time planning and not enough time making. But if you enjoy planning, go for it.
Theoretically, if you're always building spontaneously, you wouldn't really be trying to learn anything because you would only do what you can do.
I don't know. I mean, I learn a lot of things spontaneously.
I think that's a rabbit hole altogether. And I think just one kind of downside to only doing it spontaneously is that you're not spending time kind of like reflecting and maybe intentionally planning to use those skills elsewhere. I think you would gain a lot of lived experiences that you could probably be applying, but I don't know. It's like even when you're working spontaneously, you are planning to a certain extent just by the nature of like doing something and taking a second to measure things out or sketch them.
Would you consider like having an idea to make something, but then going into it without a plan being spontaneous? Like, so for instance, when I made my cutting board like a year ago, whatever, 2 years ago, I knew I wanted to make a cutting board, but I didn't know exactly how I was going to make it. I just glued stuff together, cut it up, glued it back together, like, and then saw what the result was. Like, would that be spontaneous or no?
Yeah, I would say so.
I think it all depends on how long between when you had the idea and you actioned that idea. So a spontaneous project can be like, I'm on vacation and I have an idea for this really cool project. Well, I'm obviously not in my shop, right? So I can't do it. But as soon as I get back, it's the first project I do. I would still call that spontaneous, right? Now, if I was on vacation and I had my sketchbook and I sketched and planned it all out, then I'd say, I think it all depends on how much work you do between having the idea and actually doing the project.
Right. Work you do, yeah. You said time. You get me confused. Because like there was probably like 6 months before I was like, oh yeah, I want to build a cutting board, and then 6 months later I actually did it. But I didn't actually plan anything in that time. So.
Well, on that, I would like to thank our patrons. We greatly appreciate everyone who supports us on Patreon. Everyone over there gets access to the after show. We talked a lot about our favorite movies last week, which was a good time. And I was told I need to see all the original Mad Maxes.
Yes,
we also do a pre-show every episode. Grant and I discussed coffee a bit this morning. And additionally, every one of our patrons gets a custom bespoke embossed leather keychain, one of a kind. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go to patreon.com/clamp. I think custom is the wrong word. I would more say one of a kind. I will leave it at that. Yes, if you want to learn more, you can go there. And thank you everyone who supports us. Adam, did you want to say something before we do that?
Oh, I was just going to say, how come you guys were talking about coffee?
Oh, because we're recording in the morning.
Yeah, because people that aren't on Patreon don't know. But if we seem really tired, it's currently midnight, or it's 12:30 in the morning for me, and it's 8 a.m. for them, for those guys, and Grant doesn't get up before midday, so...
I normally at least don't talk to people this early, that's for sure.
Yes.
Well, we're
actually all on the same day, too.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. It's Friday for me.
Oh, dang. On that, let's go to Clampmendations.
Clampmendations!
My Clampmendation this week is a really cool podcast that I recently heard about. It's called Switched on Pop. It's hosted by two old friends. They are one is a songwriter and the other is a musicologist. So basically, like, he studies music from an academic historical perspective, and they talk about pop music, and they do like deep dives into songs and trends and genres. And it's really interesting. It's not like super, like academic the whole time. It's kind of funny sometimes. It has good banter. They did a really interesting episode about the death of the chorus, because a lot of pop songs the last few years have been very non-traditional in terms of like they haven't had the same chorus structure as pop songs the last like 50 years. And they talk about kind of why that is, how it dovetails with streaming services and kind of the music economy, how it is right now. They sometimes do just like deep dives into specific songs. They had a really interesting one when they were talking about like the best summer songs of 2020 about Savage by Megan Thee Stallion and Beyonce. Anyways, I will link it in the show notes. If you're into like, what's it called? Song Exploder. It's kind of like Song Exploder, but not as, I would say it's a little more entertaining than Song Exploder. I will link it in the show notes and check it out.
Are they saying that modern songs don't have choruses?
No, they're saying that. So like, if you look at like a random pop song from the 80s, it probably has a chorus that comes in within like the first minute or so of the song and then repeats a couple times. But there's a lot of pop songs nowadays that you might not hear the chorus until like 2 minutes in. It might only go once, or they might have like a few things that are almost choruses, but they're more like hooks. And some songs now like don't even really have a chorus. They're more just like one
They
A
are
to
a
B.
chorus.
Yeah. Or they might just like nothing really repeats
themselves for 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean they did it on that episode. They talked about a few Drake songs. I think Drake is a good example, especially some of his more recent stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if you look at like Sicko Mode, right? Like that's like 2 songs put together. It's very non-traditional in that sense.
That's why I like it.
Yeah. All right, Grant, what is your Clampmendation this week?
Well, I'm going to Clampmendate in Instagram person.
There you go, pronounce it.
It is Unbenhagen. And they are, well, this person's name is Hans. He makes really cool kind of car-inspired, like, and tool-inspired spoons and forks and kitchen utensils and lots of really cool stuff that way, and other kind of furniture and stuff mainly out of like a lot of his stuff is out of wrenches, which I think is really cool. And
that's so cool.
He's got like a flipper that's like a wrench, and I just think it's I don't know, it's really cool stuff. You should definitely check him out, especially if you're into cars or tools. It's really cool how he's kind of combined those two things together. And if you want to know, like a flipper, like if you had like pancakes and you wanted to flip them.
A spatula?
No, a spatula is something you use to scrape.
Not here, it's not.
It might be a spatula. Yeah, an egg flipper. Yeah, I just call them flippers. You can call them whatever you want.
There's no ER.
What? There's always an ER. I'm not Australian. I can say my ERs.
No.
We like pronouncing all of our letters.
Yeah. But anyways, you should go check it out. He's really good. If you couldn't figure out how to spell that, you can check out the link in the show notes.
Well, my Clampmendation this week is something I found. I don't know how I stumbled across it, but it's really cool. There's a band that I grew up listening to called Killswitch Engage, which is like still one of my favorite bands. And this guy has gone and made remakes of all their songs and some other bands actually of like light classic piano of and this is a heavy metal band, and he's called it Chill Switch Engage. It's really good music, like really good like study music and everything as well, like chill music to have in the background. It'd be like if I could get away with it for real, it is like perfect background music for a video. And
cool.
Yeah.
That sounds.
Whenever I do editing these days, I put it on in the background.
Really sweet. Cool. All right. Well, we do have a new review this week. I did not have a chance to fully research the accent, but I will do my best. I was being a bit of a procrastinator and watching a video while you guys were saying your Clampmendations, but it was so chaotic that I don't really know if I got anything from it.
Was it Trench from Punchbowl?
I don't know. It was from a show called Houseos. Is that ringing any bells?
Houseos.
Okay, what is that?
Have you ever heard of a show called Fat Pizza?
No.
Oh wow, you guys are missing out. So Houseos is, I can't remember the actor's name, but the guys from Fat Pizza made a show called Houseos, and it's like so Houseos are people that live in like housing commission.
Okay.
But this show goes into like the bad people of housing commission, like the people that live on drugs and all that sort of stuff. And it's like literally like in a rundown suburb where crime's really high, and like they do whatever they pretty much run the town.
So it's like Trailer Park Boys.
It sounds like a darker version of Trailer Park Boys.
No, not really.
Okay. Well, Without further ado, here is the review from Mark Daner. Oh God, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this.
It's a little early in the morning too.
I'm excited.
All right, it's a 5-star review. Thank you very much, Mark. And he says, "Fair dinkin' awesome. G'day, punters. I tell you, I love this show. 3 top blokes talking making, living, and sharing. Now, Morley, remember when you research my accent, be sure to Google Aussie Bogan. Also, don't Google Michael Caine. He's a pommy and fair dink. We sound nothing like him. I just realized I sounded way too Michael Caine there.
Yeah, you don't sound Aussie at all.
Even the southern Aussies like old Jimbo at Fix-It Fingers. Here's another butte tip. In Australia, we don't throw shrimps on the barbie. They're called prawns, mate. All right, yeah, nah, oi. Scratch you later. Keep up the bonds of work. My cobblers, we love you. Yes, I am that right up." So many words in there that I've never heard before.
God, there were a lot of words in there that aren't real words.
So Adam, I think for the listeners, you should do a rapid fire definition of all the Australian slangs in there.
All right, let me go through and see what's an Australian slang.
Well, you can start with the title.
Fair dinkum.
Yeah, what is fair dinkum?
Like good.
Okay.
Yeah. Sort of.
Good awesome. It says good awesome. Is that what it says?
I don't know. It's just a word we say.
Okay. Let's do rapid fire. Punters.
Punters, like people.
Okay.
Yeah. G'day is good day.
What about blokes?
Joking, right?
I think we all know blokes.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know.
It's funny. I never would have thought Michael Caine would have like anything close to an Australian accent. I've always thought of him as like way more British.
Yeah, Michael Caine's the dude from 007, right? The old guy.
Yeah. He also plays Wilfred in the new Batman's Dark Knight.
So Bogan is the Australian version of redneck. Pommy is what we call people from the UK. Fair dink, we went over, sound nothing like him. Even the southern Aussie, like Jimbo. So we've talked about this before. Usually, like someone's name's James, we call him Jimbo. I don't really have a nickname. It'd be on like ads. But you normally just add an ad. Yeah, Damo for Damon or Damien. Butte, well, that's pretty obvious. Australia is short for Australia. Shrimps, we don't use that word. It's prawns. So this here is what gets me the all right, yeah, nah. That is a big thing in Australia to be like, yeah, nah. I don't know if that's...
I've heard that before. No, I've heard that as like a big Australian thing. It just is like a filler, right? Like when you're looking for something to say.
Scratch you later, that's pretty obvious. Keep up the bonds of work, so good work. Cobbers is like something you would say to your mate, like your mates here, cobbers, sort of thing.
Okay.
And the part in brackets, yes, I hammed that right up. That doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
Well, I think it means just like that he like tried to add as much Australian in there as he could.
Yeah, right.
Okay, how about you say the review in Australian so that people can actually understand the words? Go.
Like you want me to put on an accent or just say it normal?
You have an accent, so go.
No,
or slightly more bogan, how Mike wants it to come across.
Yeah, go.
G'day, punters. I tell you, I love this show. 3 top blokes talking, making, living, and sharing. Now, Morley, remember when you research my accent, be sure to Google Aussie Bogan. Also, don't Google Michael Caine. He's a pommy and fair dink. He sound nothing like him. Even the southerner Aussies like Jimbo at Fix-It Fingers. Here's another butte tip. In Australia, we don't throw shrimps on the barbie. They're called prawns, mate. All right, yeah, nah. Oi, scratch you later. Keep up the bonds of work, cobbers. We love you.
Nice. All right. That's good to know.
I like
That's
it.
Good. Yeah. All right.
I wish I was more bogan. I really do, because I feel like having a full bogan Australian as a YouTuber would be like so good, because people would like be like, oh my God, this dude's like intense.
What? Is he camping?
Good pun. All right. With that, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you TF Turning for the beautiful theme music. And if you want to watch the show, you can see it on YouTube. The channel's name is Clamp. And if you want to see all of Grant's beautiful cover arts, you can see that on Instagram at Clampcast. And we are also on Twitter at the Clampcast. And apparently I'm also supposed to say you can never have too many clamps. So don't forget to share the show with a friend if you do, in fact, enjoy it. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.